As visitors on this land, the town of Bradford, West Gwillimbury acknowledges that the land on which we gather today is the traditional territory of the Schnabek Nation, which includes Ojibwe, Odawa, and Potawatomi nations, collectively known as Three Fires Confederacy. We recognize the Huron-Wendat, Chippewa, and Haudenosaunee nations have walked on this territory over time. In times of great change, we recognize more than ever the importance of honoring Indigenous history and culture and are committed to moving forward in the spirit of reconciliation, respect, and good health with all First Nation, Métis, and Inuit people. Okay, so there's no motions arising out of closed. We are now into adoption of the agenda. I have a recommendation that the regular council and committee of whole agenda dated April 1st, 2025 be adopted as amended. Moved by Councillor Dykey, seconded by Councillor Kike. Questions or concerns with the agenda? Seeing none, all in favor? Carried, thank you. We are declaration of pecuniary interest in general nature. You declare it now, or if the issue comes up and you find yourself in that position, you declare then if you want. So, Councillor Giordano?
Yeah, I don't have the agenda in front of me right now. I'm trying to get access to the internet, but I do have an issue in 15.3.4, I believe it is. So I'll be recusing myself at that time.
Oh, I got you. 15.3, sir. 15.33. 15.33. Yep. Okay. Okay. Good to know. Thank you. That's noted by the clerk. Thank you. Okay. We are into now deputations, and we want to welcome Simcoe County with their 10-point homelessness prevention strategy. We have our General Manager of Social and Community Services, Mina Fayaz-Baguette, and we have Andrew Scarvelli, Director of Housing and Homeless Services. So welcome, gentlemen. Thank you for coming to Bradford.
Thank you, Mayor Leduc and Council, for having us. My name is Mina Fayaz-Baguette. I'm the General Manager for Social and Community Services. And today we were asked and invited by Council to present a little bit in more detail about our 10-point strategy for homelessness for the County of Simcoe, which includes services that we deliver here at Bradford, West Gwillimbury. We'll go through the 10 points and how we've been doing. The plan is about in its 18th month, so it's in the early kind of phase of our implementation of it. And then thereafter, we'll show you a little bit of a demonstration on some of the focus we've been working on around data and how do we present data in a transparent way on how we deliver services and how we're doing as a county when it comes to homelessness. So what I'll do at this point is I'll hand it over for the presentation to my colleague. So Andrew Scavarelli, who's the Director of Homelessness and Housing Services at the County of Simcoe.
Perfect. Good evening. Good evening, Council. Yeah, before jumping in, maybe just a quick reminder of the county's role as it relates to responsibilities under the homelessness services. So the county is deemed the community entity at a federal level, and it's considered the service system manager at a provincial level. So homelessness service system management actually covers the entire region of Simcoe County, and that does include the 16-member municipalities along with the 2 cities of Barrie and Orillia. And this does align with our regional approach to homelessness services throughout the county. And maybe just a bit more background, the province downloaded social services, so your Ontario Works, Children's Services, and Social Housing over 30 years ago to the municipal governments. And homelessness, on the other hand, is still relatively new. So back in 2014 was kind of the start, and homelessness was really around tenant supports, and it really was not around prevention. Homelessness prevention really is a term that we really haven't seen since, well, probably up until about the last few years. You start hearing more about prevention, and I think, you know, we can all identify the considerable need around homelessness supports and services. It's quite visible within all of our communities right now, and I know fairly recently we all probably read the report, or at least the summary from the Association of Municipalities of Ontario. It really does paint a stark reminder of the crisis that we are dealing with as well. So with that in mind, I think just the notion that a lot of the social services are relatively fine-tuned. We often joke that they're the 30-year-old, 35-year-old adolescent, well defined and you know, lots of experience, yet the homelessness piece is about a 5-year-old infant and still, in the growing stages, and we're still learning lots around the challenges that we're seeing. So with that, am I just queuing up next slide? Yep, awesome, okay. The 10-point homelessness prevention strategy was actually derived back in 2023 following a very comprehensive community-based review. So the county engaged a third-party consultant and basically drove a lot of these recommendations, and this was endorsed by county council, and the timing was actually quite beneficial to us. So following this plan, we actually received an increase in provincial funding of 85%. Since then, we actually received a second increase from a federal perspective, which afforded us even a greater opportunity to drive many of these initiatives. So today we'll touch on, provide some highlights on some of the early successes, and many of these initiatives are still well underway with lots of opportunities ahead. Next slide, please. So people are in shelters for the main reason that there's no place to go, or the places are not appropriate or attainable. So with this in mind, the county introduced a subsidy that drives down the price of rent from market to affordable. So in the first 5 months of this program that we rolled out following the adoption of the 10-point strategy, we issued 172 subsidies at an average of over $700 per subsidy to individuals, directly to individuals experiencing homelessness or at risk of becoming homeless. Next slide, please. And many of us may have heard or seen some modulars that are starting to arrive around the county. This actually started back in December of 2022. We had a modular facility that we had piloted in Barrie in December as part of a shelter expansion for winter response strategy. Following the end of the winter response, so that would have been the end of April in 2023, we repurposed this modular and introduced a rapid rehousing program. This is a term that we've really emphasized quite a bit, and it's such an important tool. So the rapid rehousing program is a 24/7 intensive supportive housing program where we will take individuals directly from shelters with very low acute challenges, and so not a lot of complexities, very strong likelihood of being housed and retaining that housing. These are individuals that are often experiencing homelessness for the first time, having to access shelters from perhaps rent evictions. We see individuals, perhaps seniors might lose a spouse and be unable to afford their current living situation, and unfortunately are having to rely on shelter systems. By moving these individuals out of shelter systems and into rapid rehousing programs, we are able to work very diligently with these individuals 24/7 and move them into permanent affordable housing very quickly. What that also does is, and the very crucial piece of this tool around rapid rehousing programs, is it frees up shelter space for those individuals that are unable to access shelter. So the individuals that are experiencing homelessness but are living encamped because there are no shelter beds, we are at capacity. This inflow-outflow model is super crucial to our program. So we do have a seniors rapid rehousing program in Collingwood, youth rapid rehousing program in Orillia, and we actually procured last year 2 additional modulars that we currently have set up in Blake Street and Barrie as part of our recent land acquisition. Next slide, please. The third model here is creating peace of mind when utilizing services. So a considerable barrier for those experiencing homelessness is having a safe and secure place to keep their personal belongings. And when we talk about storage solutions, I can guarantee we're not talking about large, bulky moving boxes that we might be accustomed to in moving between houses or our own personal storage solutions. These could simply be ID. It could be reloadable payment cards, which both the social assistance programs, Ontario Works and ODSP, currently utilize. And a big piece too is clothing, seasonal clothing swap, and it's something that we don't often see on the surface or think on the surface, but we see a lot of discarded clothing, in our local parks, in our communities, and it is not because the individual doesn't need them anymore. It's because they don't have anywhere to put them when the seasons change. So it's easier to discard them. But with storage solutions, you actually prevent them having to go and track down and utilize clothing banks as well come this next season change. So Individuals, in the summer, you will not see them carrying around winter boots and winter jackets. They simply discard them because there's no storage solutions. They don't have anywhere to put them. Then the next season changes over, and these individuals will go back and look for appropriate clothing based on the season. There's some really creative solutions coming down through some of our member municipalities across the province as well. We're even seeing some storage solutions pop up with addresses, mailing addresses tied to your individual storage solution, which we know for a fact there's a massive stigma tied to individuals who have to utilize shelter addresses, social service office addresses when they're looking to secure a place to rent, looking to secure a job. There is a stigma, and individuals are stereotyped based on not having a mailing address, and they're often overlooked for these opportunities. So these are some of the solutions we're continuing to further explore. Next slide, please. In 2023, we mobilized community safety teams, and we piloted that in the downtown Barrie core, and followed that with expansions in Orillia, Midland, and Collingwood. Safety teams are trained in supporting individuals experiencing homelessness, but they're also play a crucial role in connecting and supporting members of the community, your downtown businesses, your BIAs, and they're very much data informed. So often their patrols in these areas, the frequency and the location are all very much data informed. Not only do they support the engagement within the communities, but they also play a crucial role in a paraphernalia cleanup as well, which we're seeing obviously certain areas are definitely frequented much more than others, and their ability to track and monitor these locations really helps with cleanup efforts as well. Next slide, please. So we often hear the term domiciliary care. So I think it might be helpful just to give a quick preface on the term itself. So domiciliary care, it is permanent housing for vulnerable populations with health challenges that do require support for their daily activities. So if we think of individuals in long-term care facilities, these are individuals that have a higher acuity in terms of requiring more supports with some of their daily activities, such as bathing, eating, meal prep, etc. Whereas individuals in domiciliary cares require some assistance, but not enough where they would be eligible for long-term care. These individuals often are finding themselves in a really challenging place because they're accessing shelters, but they need a much more supports than what a shelter could offer. We're seeing a lot of them are living in camp. So we've actually been able to enhance our domiciliary care program. We partnered with the Ministry of Health very recently and actually just added another 30 domiciliary care beds. It's a very crucial tool to support some vulnerable populations that require assistance with daily living activities, but would normally be falling through the cracks because they're not eligible for long-term care. Next slide, please. In 2024, actually late in 2024, October of last year, we have piloted the centralization of the motel voucher program. So 211 Community Connections, very well-known agency throughout the county, was selected as the service provider. So previously, individuals and families would need to contact the nearest shelter and make individual arrangements for transportation, for motel programs, motel stays, and it was a pretty big burden around having to connect with an individual shelter who might be quite busy, handling their own shelter intake operations as well. So by centralizing the motel voucher program, which is intended for families experiencing homelessness that are unable to access the various shelters, or individuals because of their accessibility requirements, many with health needs coming out of hospital discharge programs, would access the motel voucher program as opposed to a standard emergency shelter. So by centralizing services, it is a one phone number, it is one agency, very consistent in the approaches, very consistent in the ability to make timely referrals, connect them with appropriate transportation, and get them to a local motel that's part of the program. And we're also actually looking, this year we'll be looking to standardize and centralize the emergency shelter eligibility and intake as well. So right now, each shelter has their own eligibility standards, their own intake processes, different phone numbers. Like I said, the ability to potentially get in touch with someone might vary based on shelter by the time of the day. So to be able to centralize that, we're once again looking to really standardize and streamline the process, get these individuals connected to the appropriate supports in a timely manner. Next slide, please. And with that significant increase that we realized in 2023, we were able to pass along a considerable number of enhancements to our existing funded providers. So 9 of the shelter programs received increases. The average increase across all shelters was 137% in 2023. It went up to as high as 400% for one shelter, and the lowest was a 51% increase. So, yeah, next slide, please. And the Housing Retention Program is a program, so we utilize some of this provincial funding. We created a program in-house that is eligible or is open to not just individuals in receipt of social assistance or experiencing homelessness. A large portion of the individuals who access this program are actually housed, but are either facing arrears and therefore have eviction notices, or they're in utility arrears as well. So last month's rent, first month's rent, utility arrears, and rental arrears and moving expenses are probably the most common applications that we receive. So last year we issued over $1.6 million to prevent people from entering homelessness. So they were able to retain housing or access housing for the first time. And so that's over 1,500 individuals and families throughout the county. And 2/3 of all applications were singles and couples, and 1/3 of those applications were actually families. So a very heavily utilized program. Again, the $1.6 million prevented a lot of these individuals from becoming homeless, which then would only compound, the challenges we're seeing in the system right now. Next slide, please. We also utilize some of those funds for a small capital grant program. So about $500,000 was utilized in 2023. And this was one-time funding to support the renovation of a lot of existing retrofitting, upgrading to a lot of our shelter providers and funded domiciliary care providers, supportive housing, transitional housing programs, really to meet building and fire codes. A lot of these buildings are aging. A lot of them, are experiencing challenges with the ability to continue to ensure repairs are timely and that they're meeting codes. So agencies were interested. They received the funding. They submitted an application. So we actually approved 12 projects at an average of $50,000 per grant. And the majority of those proposals that came in were all around enhancing accessibility of their existing programs, existing buildings. Many of them, like I said, are older, not necessarily meeting today's accessibility standards. So that was a benefit, especially for a growing number of individuals we're seeing with accessible needs. Next slide, please. And this one, finding new opportunities, is actually pretty timely this year. I know earlier, I'm going to turn over to Mina here shortly, but earlier this year, we received some really good news in the end of January. So the County of Simcoe was successful in its application for one of the provincial Heart Hub applications, and Mina will speak to that in a moment here. We also were successful in our encampment response application as well. So that came with a considerable investment, which will allow us to further enhance many of these initiatives we're speaking about here today. Also, we talk about land or capital acquisitions and, strategic land acquisition. So Blake Street, we were able to acquire Blake Street as a potential opportunity. We will better define out the scope around that future land use. But in the interim, we capitalized on the ability to move those 2 rapid rehousing programs, those 2 modulars on site. We also stood up a 20-person winter warming or winter warming center in late December. And given the winter we had, I can share, we might have closed one day since the end of December, and that is all weather activated as well. So really looking at any future opportunities we have to enhance our supports to the individuals experiencing homelessness. But the big piece too is focusing on outcomes and ensuring we are connecting people, moving people out of shelter systems into rapid rehousing programs, into supportive housing programs, into domiciliary care programs, and then allowing those individuals who are encamped to come into the shelters and receive the appropriate supports. On that note, I'm going to turn it over to Mina now, and he's got a couple quick slides to talk about as well.
Thank you, Andrew. So in 2025, we got three sets of announcements from the province that were all positive. A total of almost $26 million from the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing and the Ministry of Health. So Andrew had touched upon the Heart Hub's the primary portion of that funding. So the Heart Hub is a 3-year pilot program where there was 29 Heart Hubs granted across Ontario. And of those 29, really, it was 19 that were not predetermined. So it was in response to the provincial announcement of closing down some of the safe consumption programs that were near schools or childcare centers. Those programs were automatically considered to be converted into Heart Hubs, leaving 19 across the province, and the county of Simcoe was one of the 19. So this is a it's a Heart Hub stands for, like, the heart is homelessness, addiction recovery and treatment hubs. And it's not a one-place location. It's a referral pathway from clinical care and services for addiction recovery and treatment into supportive housing and finally into permanent housing over 3 separate transitions. So this includes $6.3 million annually for 3 years to operate those 3 transitions, plus a $1.8 million one-time funding to set it up. So a total of almost a little over $19 million to do that work. Over $22 million to do that work. Additionally, as Andrew shared earlier, we did also receive in late January $2.3 million to address encampments, and this funding went straight to municipal enforcement as well as creating space in the shelter system. So we strategically used those modular facilities as outflow strategies to create and to continue to create beds in the system, along with our 2 warming programs, or our 4 warming programs, to create more space in the system. So now we can address, as the weather warms up, if it ever warms up, the ability to get people inside and access our services. And then finally, Andrew had shared earlier, for our dom care programs, we received for the first time ever an assisted living program directly from the Ontario Health, and this is $1 million for people over the age of 55 experiencing homelessness. So in that time with our rapid rehousing programs, we were able to help 45 seniors living in shelters over the age of 55 come inside, which represented like more than 2/3 of the people living in shelters who are seniors. And with another program, if we are able to stand up a last program, we could probably address the last 15, which would mean that we are very close to trying to end the experience of homelessness for people over the age of 55 staying in shelters. So really exciting things happening here at the county, and to reinforce things like on our housing side, opening the Bradford build just down the street here at 151 Simcoe Street. That includes of 10% of those units, 5 units, go straight to people experiencing homelessness who are going through our rapid rehousing programs, and will get a supportive program in those buildings for 24 months. So you know, and there are some other partnerships we're working on to support all those units across the county. And then finally, I would probably close by saying as well, here in South Simcoe and in Bradford in particular, we were keen on investing in expanding our outreach programs and really focusing this year on connectivity. So we're investing in actually transit options to connect people to shelters and to all the services we shared earlier through the presentation. So you'll hear more about that coming in the next few months as we start to implement our 25-26 provincial dollars, which start today. And then I think the last thing, if you don't mind, we want to show you a little bit about the data-informed strategy with just a short demonstration, and then, you know, we'll take as many questions as there are. So while we get that up, in 2023, as a part of this launch, we launched an open data strategy where we started to present our data on shelter usage and all different types of social services. So here, if you go to open.simcoe.ca, you can see many different dashboards. The dashboards that talk about the growth of South Simcoe. When we were here representing the local immigration partnerships the new 10-year settlement strategy, we showed some of those data slides, so you could find those. But the one we're looking at particular today is our most recent data point, which is the homelessness individuals in Simcoe County. So this is a dashboard that shows you our current data of how many people are experiencing homelessness, how many people are engaging our system that experience homelessness, how many are not, how many people are entering the system and exiting the system. And here you can sort by gender, age, citizenship status, client geolocation, and then by municipality as well. So you can start to understand as a local community, what are you facing? So when you do the quick sorts here, you'll find that there's about 45 people experiencing homelessness in Bradford, West Gwillimbury on a monthly basis. And of those 45, about 30 of them or so are not engaging our system, which means that they're experiencing homelessness outside of our shelter or motel voucher, all those programs we had just shared earlier. It is an interesting model. We're probably one of very few service managers doing this regularly, and we're probably the only current service manager doing this with live data. So this automatically updates as people change their circumstances, so you can kind of track county-wide or township-wide or municipality-wise, like what your data looks like. So I welcome, and encourage people to go out there and see. The shelter data shows you how many people stayed in our shelter the night before. And that's something really good for our decision-making points. How many people are using our warming centers, our motel voucher program. It helps us make informed decisions to invest, but more importantly, it helps us be able to put in applications like the Heart Hub or encampment dollars or Ontario Health dollars, because we can defend our ask with live data that now straddles over 2 years. So October of last year was our second full year with this data set. So now we're entering our third year of data. So the data becomes richer over time, so then you can start doing trend analysis. And there's a third dashboard that does trend analysis over time. So you could see by service provider, by municipality, how we're doing over time when it comes to youth or any of the demographics that are required federally or provincially. With that, I think we can take questions if there are any.
Thank you so much, gentlemen, for that presentation. Excellent. Lots of data there. Lots of good news, though. A lot of great programs that the county's working on. And that dashboard, that's an amazing system. It really brings up the data on what's happening in and around the area. So further, any questions, Councilor Giordano?
Thank you for your presentation. My colleague here tried to open up the web page. I don't think it was working, so maybe if we can send us all the link.
Sure, it was working because it was
Yeah,
live.
I know you're on it, so
Yeah.
so
Yeah,
it's a long
absolutely.
URL. So if you send it to us,
Of
maybe we
course.
can
Of course.
have better success with that. At the end of the day, like all government levels, like we all have voters and residents that support us, right? But we also have a moral obligation to support those who are either less fortunate or need a hand up in society. I like the idea of the motel voucher based on how you explained it, where it's people coming out of the hospital with families and this and that have needs. What I'm not a fan of is when motels become a permanent or semi-permanent residence for people, and it becomes an option. The other thing too is based on your numbers, you said there's like 40-something people in Bradford that are currently experiencing homelessness. How many units did we build, or did you guys build in Simcoe County or on Simcoe Road? I think that could have serviced all of Bradford residences in theory, right? So if they were to take advantage of the opportunity, right? So that's a good building. And then the last thing is there was one of the issues I think with homelessness is it's not necessarily the stigma that's tied to what people feel that homelessness is. A lot of times just it's that super affordable housing or having a place that's available. This council passed the motion, I'm not sure if you've seen it, to the LTB to reform what they're basically doing over there, because there's so many people that want to have a basement apartment or something. And if you flood the market with opportunities, that would drive price down. The reason why rent's so high is that there's nowhere to rent. But nobody's putting their units to rent because of professional renovators that are literally, causing people to go bankrupt or lose their homes. So this problem is not solved by this municipality. It's solved by all levels of government stepping up and doing their part. And so we need help in advocating for all of that from all levels. So that's something that, Bradford, we're trying to do our part, but at the end of the day, it's upper tiers of government that really need to step up and do their part too.
Through the chair, just to give you a few points of clarification, the MVP program is offered with time limits and supports. So clients aren't just placed in motels, but their outreach teams are constantly supporting them while they stay. We used it in two different ways. We use it as an overflow for shelter for families because we don't have shelters that can shelter large families. But we also used it this winter in a unique way as an additional service for warming. We had a very cold winter and a very long winter. So that was opened up, which was it was an immense investment, but it did give us again a lot more data points on who was outside that finally relented to come inside. For the Bradford build, it was 30 units, but I want to share with you, it doesn't matter where the units are built. All of the people that would be experiencing homelessness would have access to the units wherever they open up. Whether they take it or not is a different, to your point, is a different story. And then finally, reform LBTB. So at our Affordable Housing Council committee, we did actually advocate on behalf of the county provincially and join kind of different provincial advocacy campaigns to get the LTB to start working a little bit better so that it does protect landlord rights a little bit more, as well as like tenant rights when there's rent evictions and things that also contribute. And as a landlord, like Simcoe County Housing Corp, we've seen some really good movement finally. And then from our homelessness prevention dollars that Andrew had shared earlier, we do things like try to ensure first and last month for people, to give landlords a little bit peace of mind, to damage funds, utility arrears funds, things like that, to support both the client and the landlord. And for many years, we've been engaging landlords directly in head leases where we guarantee the rent so that we can place people who are experiencing homelessness and reduce the risk on the landlord. So those are all different ways we address that.
Excellent, thank you. Great questions. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Your Worship. Mina, Andrew, thank you. Thanks for the presentation. I'm glad we as Simcoe County and each municipality, we're doing our part, but it's not enough. We all know it's not enough and we need to do more. I really like that portal, and as you know, when we launched it, both of us had many questions and we met with your team. For the benefit of the residents and my colleagues, if you can go in and explain how that data is gathered, because when we had the data in there, it showed Bradford had 45 individuals in the system, but only 2 are actually in county of Simcoe system. So I had the questions, how do you know that there's 3 youth that are couch surfing? Like all that, it would be nice for everyone to know how you gathered that information.
So through you, Mayor Leduc, so Deputy Mayor Sandhu, the way we do it is we utilize something called the Homelessness Information Family and Single Individual System. So it's HIFIS. So this is a part of our federal funding mandate. If we are a HIFIS user as a community, we get additional resources and funding. HIFIS is a database that collects information on people experiencing homelessness as they touch our system. So one thing we did in the last couple of years is we expanded the touch points or access beyond shelter and outreach and housing resource centers. We introduced it in food banks, in libraries, here in Bradford, and in housing locations or housing provider locations, as well as with like empowering street outreach and organizations like One Community Solutions to be able to capture information for us. In all of those touch points, and now with the Heart Hub, we're introducing it into health services and through our Justice Center work into justice services. So the idea is you collect information and it's a touch point whenever in the last 6 months, or actually 30 days, it renewed every 6 months, how many times the person touches the system. So they could share that they're couch surfing but not give us consent to enter that information. So we hold that information understanding, and through our warming centers as well, how many people in general are participating in our food programs, our warming programs, and so on and so forth. In terms of if they share, they're from Bradford, West Gwillimbury, for an example, we get some demographics. Our outreach will continue to engage them if they seek or consent to continuing participating. And then after a 90 to 180 day period, if they're dormant, they come off the system And if they ever re-engage us, we can reactivate their data and their account. So that's kind of how it fluctuates, and or through housing exits or exits from systems in general.
Yeah, great. Carry on.
Thank you. I just wanted to share that because that tool, since you launched it, I make a habit of going into it regular, and Councillor Ferragini is right. You can't, or Councillor Gerano, you can't access today. Something's preventing it. Maybe it's where we are, but normally I never have an issue. Even on the phone, I can look into it, and it's quite an eye opener to see it, and I'm glad we're doing something about it, and we need to do more. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. I've got Councillor Kike, and then I've got Councillor Dykey next.
Thank you for the presentation, and thanks for all the work you guys are doing countywide. So we have basically 2.5 years worth of data. Is it getting better? Is it getting worse? Is it staying the same?
Through you, Mayor Leduc, I think it depends on what you're looking at. We have definitely longer than 2.5 years worth of data. In terms of the data we're capturing now with like particular demo points, you would say that the housing outcomes and level of support or engaged clients in the system shows more numbers. So as you create more access points, more people are going to engage the system. So if you're looking just head count numbers, there's more people experiencing homelessness that we know of and are engaging now than we did 24 months ago. However, in terms of the level of service they're receiving and the quality and standardized, like continuous service they're receiving, I think that has improved. Are we moving in the right direction? Absolutely. Are we moving to the pace of people falling into homelessness? No. So our goal is to be able at some point, for every person entering homelessness for the first time, someone's exiting it. Right now that 1-to-1 ratio is not there. However, having more housing outcomes than we've ever had before, like I'm interested in the next few months to review when we started housing the seniors population, you'll probably see actually a considerable needle shift on that one demographic. Youth as well, like I think you're going to see better numbers on youth as well, because those are the two, we picked two demographics that are highly vulnerable and have a high likelihood of being housed because of the resources available. So short answer is yes, in the right direction. Long answer is we could do a lot better for sure.
Excellent question. Thank you. Councillor Dykey next.
I'll try and keep my comments brief. I just want to thank you for coming down and explaining all this to us. It's very important. Housing is a major challenge in Ontario with all the high costs of everything, land and just the cost of everything. My question is, in capital improvements, do you still have a program that was $40,000 for a landlord that wants to add on or to do something? Is that program still available? I know that I guess the federal government had an $80,000 loan to kickstart or build additional suites. I'm just curious, what does the county offer in those fields?
Through you, Mayor Leduc. Yes, so the county still offers its in-suite or secondary suite program, where it is a forgivable loan over time. I believe the threshold now was increased from $30,000 to $50,000. And you know, we were just talking about some opportunities where that could be utilized here in Bradford with an agency that has reached out to us. So certainly still available. It's a revolving fund. It used to be a provincial program that had a lot of limits on how to use it, and then we kind of mirrored the fund but made it a county-based fund so we could change the guidelines and be more flexible with how it's issued. So it's an application-based program. There's like certain milestones that you have to meet, certain conditions, like you can't, you know, sell the house right away and things like that. And if you do, you have to pay back the loan. But over time, it could be forgiven if you maintain that level of affordability in those units.
Yeah, great questions by all, and I thank everyone, and I thank you for being here. And I really, you know what, the key here that I see, and since 2014, when we first did our first 10-year plan, it's the dollars and how we're dividing them, how we're moving them forward. We're spending the money a lot wiser by using the dashboard, all that information that we've been collecting for years. it's becoming better where we're actually getting pointed to what we're doing, and it helps council, and it really helps us make that right decisions to move those dollars to the right areas to prevent homelessness in the future. That's what the idea is, to get to zero homelessness. A tough task, but you know, we never know. We never know. So thank you, gentlemen, for being here tonight. Thank you very much. You guys have a great night. We'll see you up at County next week. Thank you for coming. All right, council, we're on to open forum. Madam Clerk, do I have anybody signed up for open forum tonight?
No, Your Worship, there's no one signed up for open forum this evening.
Okay. So then we're moving on to section 10, adoption of minutes and committee whole recommendations. So I have a recommendation that the committee of whole recommendation COW 2025-14 to COW 2025-16 be approved, and the minutes of the regular council and committee of whole meeting dated March 18, 2025 be adopted as printed. Mover seconder, moved by Councilor Kike, second by Councilor Giordano. Questions or concerns? Seeing none, all in favor? Carried, thank you. Correspondence. We are on to section 11. We have Nottawasaga Conservation Authority. I have a resolution. I have a recommendation here that council receive and endorse the resolution that Nottawasaga Valley Conservation Authority NVCA opposing an amalgamation with Lake Simcoe Regional Conservation Authority, and appoint Councilor Ferragini and Councilor Scott to vote in opposition should an amalgamation meeting be called under the Conservation Authorities Act. Mover and seconder, put this on the floor. Moved by Councilor Kike, seconded by Deputy Mayor. Questions or concerns with this resolution? Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Your Worship. I read the correspondence and the other news articles in regards to this. What I felt was that there was no business case presented to show why this is needed or what benefits it's going to have. On those bases, I think it's very premature to support something like this, and I'm opposed to it. If in future they come up with a business plan that's going to show actual savings, which in my mind right now, I don't think there's going to be a savings. You know, these days we're looking at cutting the red tape. This is talking about creating a huge area that's going to be over many municipalities, which in my mind is not going to be easy or any cost savings. But I can't say that for sure because there's no data showing us to that effect. So that's why I'm right now agreeing with this and opposing the amalgamation.
Okay, thank you for that. Further comments or questions? Councilor Kike? Or, sorry. I was looking at, yeah. You want to go next? Okay. Councilor Ferragini.
Thank you. So we had a board meeting on the Friday, and Mayor Greenlaw was there, and he was explaining his situation. And the fact is that any membering municipality of the conservation authorities can bring this forward to have a look at it. So he looked at it as potentially finding efficiencies, working better together, and everything along those lines. However, a member has to bring it forward to even start the conversation or even to begin to look at it. So I want to give acknowledgement to the chair of the NVCA, Jonathan Scott, who has put forward a work plan, which is great, and also that, like, the original CAO has now retired, so now there's an interim CAO until they get a permanent, or could be the permanent. So they are working very, very hard and diligent to bring the NVCA's standards up in regards to customer service and quick turnaround times, which I want to give the benefit of the doubt to the NVCA to work on that. So I want to give props for that. The way the resolution is written, however, that we endorse it to oppose the amalgamation, to Deputy Mayor's comments, I agree that I can't support it, and I agree that I can't oppose it because I have no information in front of me. So to just flat out, if as a municipality we turn around and say we completely oppose this when no information has come forward to anybody, we don't know what could potentially happen. So would it just instantly get shot down and say, okay, well, forget it, we're not even going to look into it anymore? I'm not 100% sure of that. I would like to see facts. That's what I like to vote on and make educated decisions on. So the way that it reads as our resolution, to endorse the resolution opposing the amalgamation, and then to appoint myself and Councillor Scott to vote in opposition should the amalgamation be called under the Conservation Authorities Act. I would actually like to amend this, and I would like to put it that we receive the correspondence for information, and that myself and Councillor Scott be appointed to vote should an amalgamation meeting be called under the Conservation Authorities Act. So that way there's not a full-blown, you're going up there to oppose, because we don't have the information. We have no information whatsoever, so I don't want to say yes or no to anything unless I actually have the facts in front of me.
Thank you for that. So we have an amendment proposed, Madam Clerk, so I need a seconder to put this on the floor. Do I have a seconder for the amendment? Councillor Giordano. Okay, so that is on the floor. I open it up for further conversation. Councillor Kike, and then I go to Councillor Harper.
Okay, so I'm okay with that part of the amendment, but I'd still like to say, as it stands, we're opposed to it as a council, and then leave out the part that we tie their hands in a vote. Because as it stands, they've given us nothing. And to go and amalgamate two watersheds that go from Lake Scugog, the Kawarthas, to the Blue Mountains is ridiculous without any justification. Like, why didn't they just come out with some justification in the first part? Just saying there's going to be efficiencies is BS, because bigger isn't better. So I'd like to say we're opposed to it in principle at this stage, and that we appoint them to vote, or to vote as they see fit.
Okay, thank you for that. I'm just going to go to Councillor Harper. Then I've got, if I don't have anybody else, I'll come back to you. Yes, please, last. Okay. Okay, Councillor Harper.
Thanks, Mayor. To my colleague's point there, and maybe I'll direct this back to Council Ferragini. If you guys do get information that weighs in, or there is no information, and they still ask you for a vote, would then you oppose that? Yeah, like, as it seems like there won't be any information at this point that's being presented to us. But what if they come with like a limited business plan? What if they come with something that's doesn't really make sense, but they promise that they'll do it, or something like that, you know, without any facts or numbers? You know, kind of like how we implemented the carbon tax policy without any numbers. Same kind of thing. Anyways, just throwing that back to you.
Okay, so I've got Councillor Ferragini next, and then Councillor Scott.
So at our board meeting, it was explained to the members of the board that one membrane municipality has to bring it forward to even begin a process. So that's why our Madante brought it forward. He felt, Mayor Greenlaw felt that we could have a look at efficiencies. He didn't want to look at a full-blown takeover. It is an amalgamation of the two. Is it feasible? Would it work? We don't know that yet. But he had to bring it forward as it was the first step in the process to even have a look at it. So that's why it was done. It's not like all of the municipalities are going to turn around and say, yep, we're totally into this without any information whatsoever.
Okay, I've got, hang on if you want to speak last. I've got Councillor Sandu wants to go now, or do you want to go? Go ahead. I can let you go. Okay. I mean, Deputy Mayor Sandu.
Thank you. My point was that right now what's before us is that there's no business plan whatsoever. It was, let's amalgamate. If they wanted to bring a proposal saying let's look at it, that recommendation or that resolution would have been written differently, saying this is what we want to see. We ask that municipalities agree to having this looked at where we have a business plan. This is, the way I read it, is asking us to go ahead and go with it. That I can't support. I trust both of you individuals on respective CAs. But at the end of the day, you're appointed by this council to represent the will of this council and this municipality on those boards. And if there's no information right now for you to make that decision, then in my mind, right now, the answer should be no. But if everyone's okay with leaving it, like I said, I trust you fully, but if there's no information, like Councillor Harper said, the answer should be no.
Good point. Okay, I've got Councillor Scott.
Thank you. I want to talk about three things: the process, the substance, and then the NVCA in general. First, on Councillor Ferragini's amendment, I think I'm happy with an outcome that does two things, and very much in line with what the Deputy Mayor and Councillor Harper just said. I'd like to say we're opposed because we do not have a case, a business case or otherwise, for why amalgamation would be good. And I'd like to appoint myself and Councillor Ferragini to go vote if and when that meeting is called. So two things: this council's opposed because I agree there isn't another option when you don't have the facts, and I'll explain why when I get to process. And then B, appointing the two of us to go vote. So I wouldn't be in favor of your amendment right now, Councillor Ferragini. If it could be a little bit more nuanced to do that A plus B factor, I think that's a fair way to reword the motion. Process-wise, I want to quibble with how it was presented, what Oro-Medonte is doing. They, and the Deputy Mayor just spoke to this a bit as well, they didn't pass a resolution saying, let's look into this. They didn't even tell the NVCA that they were planning to do this. They passed a resolution triggering the amalgamation process under Section 11 of the Conservation Authorities Act. What is that process? It is a yes-no question at a meeting of the member municipalities on a weighted vote, where the question is, do you dissolve the LSRCA, dissolve the NVCA, and create a new mega authority from the core of the lakes to Blue Mountain and Grey Highlands? To put that into context, that is bigger than some European countries. It is 30 plus individual municipalities, I believe 8 regions and counties. That process was triggered 2 months ago. They have not yet called the public meeting, but they can do it with 2 weeks notice. And they have to put advertisements in the local papers, etc., just like a public planning meeting. We're not able to go there and refer it back to staff for more information or say, I might be in favor if you could present a business plan. It's, are you in favor of amalgamation or are you against? If we vote yes and it gets a 2/3 majority, it's a recommendation to the Minister of the Environment and he makes the final decision. But his final decision isn't going to be to send us back to do the homework if we've already decided we're in favor. So the logic that others have said in terms of you have to be opposed because there is no information seems correct to me. So on the substance, you would be merging 2 of the larger authorities in the province together. You would be merging them despite the fact that they border 5 or 6 other conservation authorities into one new authority. Where would you find the notion of savings or efficiencies? The same number of personnel are going to be needed to deal with the same number of planning files, the same number of summer camps and educational programs and watershed science. It's not as if the watershed is going to have less development or less natural resources to manage. By the same token, it's not as if we're going to sell off properties. They're conservation areas that the public enjoys. This isn't merging 2 corporations together where you could reduce headcount because the actual demands are going to increase. Perhaps you could get rid of one of the 2 CAOs, but I'm willing to bet, like when we looked at the BWG and Innisfil Fire merger, the first thing a new CAO is going to suggest is hire me a deputy. I can't manage an authority of this size on my own. So I don't believe a bigger bureaucracy is good for business. I certainly don't believe it's good for local government. I think local decisions should be made locally. It's also against the spirit of why we have conservation authorities. We'd be ramming 2 separate watersheds, one a lake with special powers under the Lake Simcoe Protection Plan, together with a river coming out of Lake Huron with all the attendant Great Lakes protection issues. They're very separate watersheds. A river is different than a lake. Lake Simcoe is actually a very special and sensitive lake. And I've heard from other Lake Simcoe region municipalities who have said, we have enough on our plate trying to deal with protecting Lake Simcoe. I don't want to take on the Nottawasaga River and Georgian Bay, and I think that's fair. The other piece of the puzzle, the municipalities in the western part of the NVCA live extremely far away from the rest of Lake Simcoe. They're up in arms about this. This was presented without notice to them, and it's not a discussion. When we looked at the merger of the Bradford and Innisfil Fire, we passed a resolution, Innisfil passed a resolution saying appoint a committee and go look at it. Oro-Medonte could have done that. They could have come to us and said, we're interested in kicking the tires on this. Let's find 50 grand and go study it for 6 months and come back with a recommendation. They did not do that. It seems perhaps that they're trying to suggest that that is somehow what they still want to do, but they haven't proposed that. And instead what they've done is they've reached for the big red button and pressed it. And if they call a meeting, it's a binary yes-no question. I just want to say one other thing about the NVCA. Councillor Ferragini spoke to this. Every institution has its challenges and every institution has its critics. The LSRCA certainly does, and so does the NVCA. NVCA does incredible work managing the natural environment in the Nottawasaga River Valley and the Georgian Bay region. We run great educational programs. We maintain beautiful parks, the Nottawasaga Bluffs in particular. We've had a challenge in our planning and permitting department, and the action plan that we put forward under the interim CAO has cut the list of pending applications in half. How did we do this? We did it through a new triaging system based on risk. Low risk permits and applications are treated very differently than high risk ones. Septic tanks, for instance, are low risk. Real development applications are high risk. We've cut that list in half. It'll be cut again in half by the end of April and eliminated entirely in July. We also introduced e-permitting. That's not just a more convenient way for a resident or a business to apply. It also saves about 45 minutes on average for every application because the person issuing the permit inputs it into a form rather than drafting it. Sort of can't believe we had to implement that, but it's a good change. And we're also trying to change the culture. You know, in the 60s and 70s, we created all these environmental protection measures because we wanted to protect against the excesses of the 40s and the 50s when they had the baby boom and they built and they didn't really care about environmental protection. Well, now the pendulum swung too far, and we have to switch from a culture of saying no to good development to a culture of saying yes to facilitating sustainable development done safely. And that's the cultural change we're trying to get to as we work to meet the province's home building and economic development goals. I was meeting with a group of home builders today. They think this is a really bad idea because they would not like to deal with a much bigger bureaucracy. They like dealing with two smaller ones where they can know the folks and develop a business relationship. Finally, on efficiencies. Conservation authorities through Conservation of Ontario, where I'm the vice chair, collaborate already. We buy in bulk, IT, insurance, even some fleets. I want to look into that far more. I do agree there are efficiencies in how the 36 conservation authorities run, but I think we can do that by collaborating and coming to joint purchasing agreements, not through ramming two of them together and creating a brand new entity that wouldn't work democratically, functionally, operationally for all the reasons we've gone into. So I think it's been a good discussion tonight. I will leave it there. My main thing today is to say, I think we have to be opposed because there hasn't been this information presented, and we're not being asked to study this. We're being asked to vote yes or no in favor. And I think appointing myself and Councillor Ferragini is also the second part that we need to do. So that's where I stand. If we can do both of those two things, I'm happy with however we word it, but those are the two operative things I think our council should do tonight.
Okay, thank you very much. Excellent. So can we see the amendment up on the screen, Madam Clerk? Have you got that amendment written? And I'm actually glad we had this conversation because you know what, it has opened up some opportunities to make efficiencies, and actually shared servicing is something that I think we can all look into. And when it comes to efficiencies, that's the greatest thing to do is everybody working together to create these efficiencies. So what have we got here? So I get it. That's something. It has to start somewhere. The council receive and endorse the resolution of the Nottawasaga Valley Conservation Authority for information and appoint Councillor Ferragini and Councillor Scott to vote should an amalgamation meeting be called under the Conservation Authorities Act. Okay. Is that your amendment, Councillor? No? Yeah, receive and endorse. endorse the recommendation. That's what I would. Okay. But definitely think of the opposition voting part of it. So if it was thrown at me tomorrow and they said, we're gonna amalgamate, I got no information. I don't want it. You want the opportunity to do it yourself or whatever if you don't get the information. Okay. So this is the recommendation, the amendment we have there on the floor. We further conversation on it, our understanding of it.
I would just like to say, we oppose it as it stands with the information we have today. We oppose it as a council, but we don't tie the vote. We don't tie them to the voting as was written in the original motion.
Councilor Genie?
Okay, that's fair comment. We can amend it so that it says something along the lines that based on our current information or whatever, however we want to word it, if anybody can help me wordsmith it, based on the current information that this council has at this point, we oppose it. I can do that.
Pretty good wordsmithing. Yeah, I thought you did a pretty good job. Put it on there. So did you get that, Madam Clerk? Yeah. I know we will. We always do. Remember, your mics are live still, so be careful. Okay, we have it here now, so let's see if if everybody's okay with this one. The council received the resolution from Noticeaga Conservation Authority for information and oppose an amalgamation within the Lake Superior Conservation Region based on the current information and appoint Councilor Ferragini and Councilor Scott to vote should an amalgamation meeting be called under the Conservation Authorities Act. Are you okay with that? I see it's got it all. I'm good with it. I'm comfortable voting on it too. So okay, all right then. If we're okay with that amendment, so we will call the vote on that amendment the way it's written. All in favor as amended, or all in favor of the amendment? Sorry. And so we'll go back to the original, and it'll be as amended. So we're voting on the original motion as amended. And the mover and seconder for that portion was Deputy Mayor Sandu and Councilor Kike. We can keep those same two. And we'll call for the vote on that as amended. All in favor? Okay, carried. Thank you. Well done. Good conversation. Well done on that one. Okay, we are on to staff reports 12.1. Additional base station for the water meter communications. So I have a recommendation that report WD 2025-1 titled Additional Space Station, or Additional Base Station. Yeah, I was up in space there for a minute. For water meter communication be received, and that council approve the purchase and installation of a M420B base station at the Bondhead Water Tower at a cost of $140,086, including HST recoveries, to be funded 50% each through the Water and Wastewater Reserve Funds. Mover to second for this, please, to get it out there. Councillor Harper. Councillor Dehaney, would you move second it? Okay, Councillor Ferragini. Okay. Questions or comments with this report? We need it. We need to update our communication system to pick up all the water meters. Okay, so no further comments. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. We're into 12.2 tariff escalation for procurement commodities. So I have a recommendation that report LAG 2025-4 titled Tariff Price Escalation for Procurement Commodities be received for information, and the council approve additional funding of $15,000 CAD, Canadian funds, to cover the not to exceed tariff impact fee cap imposed by the supplier, and that upon delivery the supplier be requested to produce whatever documentation sets out the specific tariffs imposed on the town's purchase. Move to second to put this on the floor. Moved by Councillor Kike, seconded by Councillor Dykey. Question concerns with this? I appreciate that we put it in there. We want the documentation. We've seen this, and it's actually happened in the county also too. So the county requests documentation to come through when we deal with tariffs. So I'm okay with the way this is written. Okay, further, any comments or questions? Seeing none, all in favor? Carried. Thank you. Okay, we're on to 12:13, staff reports. Request for staff reports tonight? Councilor Dehaney?
Thank you, Mayor. I would like to know from staff if you have any update about the stair lift at the Leisure Center. I know that residents definitely would like to know, so if we can just get that.
A request for staff report on the chairlift? I thought we just got the email for that. That showed the installation date and everything.
Yeah, but for the public to hear, right? Yes.
Oh, okay.
Because persons are watching as well, so we want to keep them updated as well.
Okay. So we want it in council then? You want the report in council, or can we do a post? Is that what you're after? I'm just clarifying. In council.
In
okay.
council, yes.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you. Sorry about that. That's it. Any further requests?
Point of order, Mayor.
Yeah.
When you ask for comments or concerns for 12.2, I'd like to go back there. I know there was a vote, but I did have questions or comments that I'd like to put forward. And you might have missed my hand when it was up, but you mistake it as a vote.
Oh, okay.
So if we could go back, that'd be great.
Okay. Is it just comments or questions, or? Okay, go ahead and we'll go back to that. Apologize if I missed your hand. I thought it was the.
Yeah, I was in the middle of having a drink. Of water, yes. When we talked about these tariffs, and I'm probably going to get our procurement manager up to answer some questions, and there were really good questions actually the deputy mayor asked. It brought a lot of raised eyebrows though in regards to what we do have in regards to our suppliers. They're Canadian, but they're sourcing from America, and that there would be actual more costs associated to this tariffs if it came by in regards to what we had. We don't know what these costs will be, but one thing that I was a little bit curious about is that we haven't investigated sourcing any units from suppliers in Canada that actually build Canadian equipment. I'd like for us to probably go back and see if that's possible, that we can have any operational assessment initiated, that our procurement policies be reviewed to actually look for Canadian suppliers that actually have Canadian built equipment. Especially if more vehicles or tariff numbers will be coming back to us. That may be costly, I get it, but we don't know how long this endeavor will be with the tariffs or how long it will be instilled. But if our goal is to actually increase national support and to have Canadian manufacturing, that's something that we may need to look at. Right now, is that something that we could do? Or is that something that would be initiated in more of a staff report? I'll put that to the procurement manager, please. Go ahead.
Thank you, Councillor Harper. We did look at a company that Deputy Mayor Sandu proposed in his messaging to me yesterday. It actually turns out that the cabin chassis of that proposed vehicle is the same as the one we're trying to procure today, which is not built here. So it isn't all built in Canada. The plow components may be manufactured here, but that's about it. To look into Canadian suppliers, it will take time. It's not going to be as easy as tomorrow we can find somebody else to procure from. Keeping in mind we also have these 3 plow trucks on order already. There may be risk to us canceling to do that as well.
Just supplementary? Go ahead.
But is that something that this council is willing to look at though, in regards to that? Like how deep is our national support in regards to that versus the operational equipment? So
Yeah, just before she comments, we were at Good Roads I just left Good Roads there for the last few days. Talked to many suppliers there. There is no supplier that we had found at Good Roads, and we're only talking Ontario right now, though, so we have one right across the country. When we get to FCM or AMO, we'll get a little bit deeper. But there was no supplier that could supply those products that didn't come from America. So there's a couple of items, and I think it was identified way back. The chassis on the plows and the chassis on the fire trucks. Those are two areas that we do not manufacture in Canada for sure. So even our trucks are going to go across the border. So tomorrow we're going to see a bigger impact. I think you're absolutely right. We need to look into it, and I think her report, report that we just did last week, talked about doing deeper investigations to find out how we can identify more Canadian content. I think that's what we need to get to, because I'm going to say that there's a lot of stuff that we're intertwined with the American economy that's we're not going to be able to get around. So to me, it's a great idea, great point, and I think it's in that report that we'll continue to source that. I do certainly want to source Canadian as much as we can. But so your point is well taken, and we do want to do that. It'll be through that report. Hopefully, we can get there, because it's a difficult one. I walked through 50, 60 booths. Peter and I did, and we just couldn't find a supplier that could do Canadian only. So it's difficult out there right now. So I turn over to I think Councillor Scott. Did you want to talk?
So Councillor Harper's question and the manager's answer raises a meta point, and I'm going to make it because I think it's important given tomorrow's likely news, and I'm almost tempted to quote the man back to him. So Donald Trump, if you're listening, this is the absurdity of what you're doing. What is an American car? We make them in Oshawa and Windsor and Oakville with you. And so the disruptive nonsense that your addled brain is proposing to do to our economy and yours is going to cause massive economic disruption across supply chains, because for 100 years we've been the best of friends and neighbors working together to build things, and whatever bozo scheme you think you're concocting is going to lead to an absurd amount of disruption and the opposite of lowering egg prices and the opposite of lowering grocery prices that you were elected to do. So hopefully you have a good sleep tonight and wake up on the right side of the bed tomorrow morning and tweet the right thing, because what you're proposing is insane. I didn't mince my words.
No. It is about his sleep, I think. But Councillor Harper, would you like to have a conversation later on we can sit with the procurement and we can talk about what you're talking about? Because I think it's in your report that we can actually do that and find ways, like you say, to support Canadian. If you're okay with that?
I'm okay with that. I just, because we know that we do have more vehicles coming forward, and then based on what information is tomorrow, I wouldn't like it to come back as a surprise or a shock and awe and be like, hey, we're on a deadline for this. I would like to propose, and maybe through CAO's action, for information to their managers to look at the information or the vehicles that we do have in procurement, and then reach out to them ahead of time and maybe get the heads up that this may be what's coming to us in some of these vehicles. Based on your email, I read it quite well. It was very, very thorough, which gave me a lot of this information to come prepared today. And I thank Deputy Mayor for asking those questions, because it's one thing being caught on the back foot and having to make a decision in haste, and that happens sometimes here, and I get that. But this is one of those things that we could be proactively approaching, especially coming in light of tomorrow. So I would just like, if that's possible, any of those vehicles that we do have that are outstanding, hey, reach out and be like, send us an email, be like, this is what's coming down the pipeline, and give us a heads up. That's what I'd like.
And I'd like that too, tell you the truth. So I don't know if this is changeable, but I will tell you that I've arranged a couple of meetings with some businesses in town to start talking about what the tariffs are how they're gonna impact, and they're gonna help me work through those. Knowing what's coming, and they're more in the know than we are, but we're going to work with them to find out what the real impacts are. But I'm going to tell you right now, and I think Councillor Scott said it, the vehicles, they go back and forth the border at least 5 to 6 times. They've already said, the manufacturer's already said, there's a $5,000 to $6,000 increase in a vehicle right off the bat. So I think this is where this supplier got those numbers. It came from that back and forth with the products we're doing, because it's our steel going there the whole bit. So if this didn't change, we had a good conversation, and I'd prefer to have that conversation further, and we can always sit down and chat with our procurement people and make sure that yeah, I hear you. We're going to do that. that as best we can. Very good. Okay, so we're good. 12.2 is good. We didn't move that. We got to Councillor Dehaney's request for staff report for, yes, no problem, thank you. We haven't voted on it yet, so do we have another staff report request?
Councillor Duhaney, through the mayor to Councillor Duhaney, if I may, are you interested in having a member of staff give a short update tonight about the status of the new lift at the Leisure Centre? Would that get what you're after?
Not for even the CEO, if that's fine, because he has access to that info as well. Yeah.
Are you prepared to, Terry, come up and give us an update tonight?
Thank you for the question. As of today, the progress on the job is nearly completed. We're just waiting for a couple of items to finish up, and then waiting on TSA inspection. This is holding to the timelines that we originally reported to council on from the very beginning. So we're targeting those dates still.
Okay, so we're almost done. We're just waiting for the TSSA to come in, and then we have some training to do, things like that. So, okay, are you good with that though? Are you fine with that? Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, perfect. Okay. All right, so we're into committee hall then. We'll move into committee hall. Recommendation that council resolves up to committee hall at, who's got time? 8:16. Moved by Councillor Dehaney, seconded by Councillor Perugini. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. We can go right into it. We'll turn it over to you, Deputy Mayor.
5 minutes break and then we go into it. Yeah, thanks. Okay, recommendation that council resolve into committee of whole at 8:22 p.m. Committee of the whole called to order 8:22. We did that before. Okay, staff reports. Declaration of pecuniary interest, agenda nature. None declared. Joe, yeah, well, his item is 15.3.3, so it's at the last, but we do recognize that Councilor Giordano declared on that. Okay, getting into staff reports. Okay, recommendation that report FIN 2025-04 titled 2025 Final Tax Levy Bylaw be received for information. At that council select option, there's options A and B, as described within this report to finalize the 2025 property tax rate calculations, and that the 2025 final tax levy bylaw and the 2025 Holland Marsh drainage system levy bylaw be brought forward to the next meeting of council to be considered for approval. Mover and seconder, please. Mayor Leduc, Councilor Dykey. Okay, I open the floor for questions or to put the option on the floor. Mayor?
I'll start off with option A, the 2.70. I think I'm hoping council's in support of that. We decided 2.70 way back, and there's a small, slight change because of the policing budget, but our director of finances come back with the fact that this is a new lease. It's based on growth, so it should be through our development charges, which would be in our base budget in the future. So I am prepared to stick with 2.70, and I'm hoping council supports option A also. Thank you.
Okay, seconded by Councilor Scott. The option. Further questions or comments? Councilor Verkuyk.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, just throwing this out, is there an option C where we do the policing part but not touch our reserves, where we do something between 2.7 and 2.8? Because I'm kind of thinking, why are we using our tax, whatever that's called? Pardon? No, there's the second part, tax rate stabilization. Why are we using tax rate stabilization when we're already presenting a tax increase that's around the inflation rate, and we should be saving that money for future stabilizing? But just throwing it out.
Well, we have a duly moved recommendation for option A. Let's discuss on this, and based on this, if there's another recommendation afterwards, we can go on. Councilor Harper.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. You know, as a council, I think it's our responsibility to uphold the trust placed upon us by the residents. Maintaining that 2.7% rate is literally a commitment to our fiscal integrity, the work that we put in, responsible governance, and basically delivering the value while respecting financial pressures on our community and which they face. So I'd like to continue leading with accountability and ensuring that a decision that we've made reflects the trust they put in us and maintain that 2.7%.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Ferragini.
Thank you. I was actually going to be in favor of option A as well. We went through a diligent process. We went line by line in the budget. We came out, publicly said it was a 2.7 increase. I don't want to see an increase here. There was a big increase in the police budget, and the fact that it's the police budget that's actually manipulating this again right now, I was just going to say they can find it within the budget that they got this year. That's where it should be found, because we've already made a huge increase for the police budget. So now for it to come before we actually approve it, I'm not in favor of that. So I am in favor of option A and keeping it at 2.7.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Giordano.
Yeah, I as well want to keep it as 2.7. And, you know, our police services have been drastically underfunded for a very long time through previous decisions. And we're at the opportunity now where we're starting to invest a lot more into them. However, they need to do a better job of getting their numbers ahead of time to us, because we're making a decision for our tax rate, and then to have this number basically come back and then come back again. They already gave us a budget. Now they came back and said, oh, sorry, it's more money. We got to do better. Like, we're working our tails off here to try to make, to give the best value to our residents as possible, as little tax rate. And then to have this, it's not fair. What are we going to do? Pull it away from other things that we've approved? Like, we made a promise to our town here. We said 2.7, and we went hard with 2.7. We got it down. I don't want to just, let anybody know that no matter what, you can keep coming back and ask for more and ask for more, ask for more. No, it's 2.7.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments or questions? Councillor Scott.
As a general rule, I want to keep taxes as low as possible, and we committed to 2.7%, and we should stick to it. So I am supporting option A. 2 comments. One, we have used the tax rate stabilization to smooth out police budget increases in the past, so that's fair. I would hope that at the June meetings where we deal with the year-end financials, we could essentially pay ourselves back from any surplus that there may have been from the 2024 year-end results. So this is almost like a month and a half or so or a 2 month and a half borrowing operation as far as I'm concerned, if we can reimburse that one reserve, the $48,000 or whatever it is. And then my second comment is the budget process has changed on us through this term of council, and I just wonder if we should be giving some thought to to Councillor Giordano's point, when we finish our 2 days of deliberation, do we need to leave the budget open for maybe a little bit longer to let the dust settle with the other authorities that have an impact on us, like police or the county? I think we should look at that a little bit. We've had 2 years under the new strong mayor powers budget, and I think we're still working out the wrinkles in that process, and seeing how the dust settles this year might be instructive for our timelines next year.
Okay, thank you. Good comments. Councillor Dykey.
To add to these comments, I support the 2.7. Nobody likes to see any realistic tax increase, but with all the things that we are doing, there's a lot of positive things in our community, which is great. But policing, to come in at the last minute to ask for more, it isn't right. But saying that, on the other hand, policing is a very complex business. Economies change, things change, events happen, but I'm going to stick with the 2.7 as we move forward. And especially with the way the economy is, we're not getting a lot of growth and all that. I think we're holding it within the lines. I think it's very challenging as it is.
Okay, thank you. Perhaps I can go back to Mayor Leduc as being member of the services board. You can explain why the increase came in.
Yes, thank you, Deputy Mayor. And I'm going to actually call up our Director, Ian, Finance, to explain a little bit further, but it's not that they asked for more money. It's the redistribution of the service, so it's the cost sharing agreement. But I'll just ask Ian this. He's much more articulate than I am when it comes to sharing numbers.
Thank you. So further to the Mayor's comments, the change in the amount of funding required for the police services budget is not because the police board budget changed. Council approved that budget in January through a staff report. That budget in quantum remains unchanged. What has changed is how that budget is split between Innisfil and Bradford to West Gwillimbury. When we wrapped up with the budget process, we had an estimate of what that cost sharing split was going to look like for 2025. And unfortunately, well, not unfortunately, but anyway, that calculation is a factor of population, households, and assessment value for each municipality, and it gets weighted out together to come up with a percentage. But this year, unlike other years, there was I'll say really a last-minute change to the number of households that Impact was tracking for Bradford West Gwillimbury at the end of 2024. So that increased number of households increased our share of the budget. So that's the dollar amount that has resulted in going from 2.7 to 2.82%. It's the change in the cost sharing of the existing budget. So I don't want anyone leaving this meeting with the impression that the police board changed their budget. They did not. The quantum of police board budget remains unchanged. It's how much Bradford's paying towards that and how much Innisfil is paying towards that. And that was the increase that took us from 2.7 to 2.82. But all the same, staff recognize that as council has mentioned, there's an expectation set up amongst council and with the community upon concluding the budget process that 2.7% was going to be the number for 2025. So staff came up with a way to bring in some additional funding to return that 2.7% through the final tax rate calculations.
Okay, thank you. Hello?
Further comments then. So thank you, Director of Finance, Ian. Thank you very much for that. So let me just refer back. This budget process has not changed. Even though it's called the mayor's budget, we have not changed the budget process at all. We've done this for years. It's the same process. It was, we referenced it way back. We said that when it comes to waiting for the county, because there's steps we have to go through, and we had to still wait for the county ratios, a rate to set the rates. So that could have changed our budget also, and we would have had to work through that. So it's a step process that we've had to work through, and it's the same that happens every year. We can't finalize the budget till the county comes back with their report about the ratios and that. If any of those numbers would have changed, it would have impacted us. If they would have shifted commercial or the new aggregate tax level, if they would have shifted any of those numbers, it would have impacted us residentially, because that's who picks up the different costs. So in the end, we would have had to work through that. So we're okay with what we did. I think the process is working out fine. I think it'll continue that way. We've done a great job, and it was good that it wasn't something that we couldn't overcome. The good thing is it wasn't something we can overcome. I'm happy to say we're going to stay with 2.70. I'm thanking council for supporting that. We need to support that because it is tough times for all of us, but good to see that we got this done. Thank you, Deputy Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Ferragini?
Thank you, Ian, for the explanation. I'm still in favor of option A to keep the 2.7. I would like to retract all the comments that I made about the South Simcoe Police. From now on, we're going to get staff up here first to explain things before we start going off ranting and raving. Thank you.
Councilor Scott, I was going to make a comment about that, but Councilor Scott.
Thanks. So my comment about the process changing, in fact, it did. One of the last things we do at the budget process now is to decide whether we waive our right to further amendments. We've twice exercised that the day of because of the mayor's veto process. My suggestion, because of the changes that in fact have occurred through the strong mayor's process, I think we need to think about whether we do all of that in one day, or we wait and we see where the police and the county, et cetera, come in. Because on that respect, the mayor's right. We're approving something and then waiving the right to further amendments. It's reflected in Director Goodfellow's report tonight. How do you amend a budget when we've waived the amending period? That was my point about how the process has changed, and we might have to give it a little bit more thought to how we do it this coming year for the third time's a charm factor.
Okay, Councilor Harper?
Deputy Mayor, thank you. In regards to process, and so one thing that's changed at a municipal level, but there has been no like ebb and flow in regards to the county level or provincial level in regards to taxes or some of these other institutions like the police services boards and the amalgamations and stuff. Should they not, and this may go out to CAO for comment here, do we need to put something in place so that everybody actually starts responding appropriately based on the actual timelines contingent to us having to make decisions based on a budget because of the strong mayor powers mandate? Is there something in place that we have to do for process that puts these other places, institutions, to actually start allowing us to make timely decisions instead of actually affecting residents based on a strong mayor's power mandate from the Ontario government?
Mr. McKnight?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Great question. The sequence in which municipalities deliberate and approve their budgets and timing is entirely up to municipality. Years ago, we, like many other municipalities, wouldn't get to an approved budget until sometimes the spring of the actual year. Some places still do that. We purposely moved that whole process towards the end of the outgoing year in order to have our approved budget ready to go January 1, primarily so that we could get to market with some of our capital programs, going out to tenders, RFPs, things of that nature, ahead of others in order to try and get better pricing, as well as to actually complete those capital programs within the year they're approved for. So in that regard, I think that's been quite successful. It's helped ensure that we're getting as sharp a pricing as possible through that competitive process. The downside is that often we're asking our council to make decisions before some of our partners are ready to make decisions. And that's what I think you're referring to. We can't stipulate when Simcoe County or conservation authorities or South Simcoe Police approve their budget. They do work with us. They provide us with estimates that are generally pretty close to what their final numbers are. And that's what we share with council through our process. But as far as requiring them to fall lock and step with our process, we're not able to do that. So, I think for the most part, that process has worked well for us. On occasion, though, we have to make these tweaks.
Thank you, Mr. McKnight. I think, Mr. Goodfellow, you have a comment to add?
Certainly, thank you. I could offer a couple additional comments in support of what you just heard from the CAO. And this year really was that last minute change that MPAC added. I think it was 200-something households to the tax roll. That changed the cost sharing split from what was estimated. And given that we've been in a number of years now where MPAC has not changed the assessment base, we're still working on 2016 assessment values, that has given us a greater level of predictability in estimating the tax rate increase before we get through those final steps that the mayor spoke to earlier. And while I don't have previous years, but I can certainly recall last year's figures. When we wrapped up the budget process last year, it was estimated to be a 4.24% tax rate increase. At that point in time, we still had to go through the remaining exercises of doing the cost sharing split for the police board budget between Innisfil and Bradford, and as well had to have the county of Simcoe set their tax rate policies. At the end of that process last year, it came down to 4.21. So if those 200 households hadn't have been added at the last minute to the roll, and I actually wasn't discovered until well into 2025 when I was working with Innisfil to sort out those numbers, and we were quite surprised. We were double checking to see like what went on here. We still don't really know. We know which properties that 200 households relate to, but it was unusual that the impact that data was added so late in the process. So we don't really know how that showed up. But anyway, at the end of the day, if that had not have taken place, I would have been sitting here tonight bringing you a report that said 2.7% on or about within a few fractions of a percentage point. So, so in previous years, most recent years, that process has worked fairly well. It has, when we have wrapped up the budget process, when we don't have reassessment, it has been very predictable in terms of where we're going to end up at the point in time we are now in terms of settling on an actual tax rate for that taxation year. So this year was a bit of an anomaly to have those households at the very last minute. As I said, save and except for that, we would have been pretty close tonight to what we would have been talking about when we were up to the budget process.
Thank you, Mr. Goodfellow. I actually want to thank you too for this report, because when you look at it, you provide good options, and I think the option that's presented before us, option A, is a very good option. It's it's only $107,000, and we're taking half out of the police reserves and half out of the tax stabilization reserve, so it balances it out, which is good. And the changes, what the change is, the population numbers changed, and as that, we are here. Otherwise, I think this council and our staff, even our partners, did a very good job with coming up with the budget numbers. Councillor Janana, you're going to have a final point, then I'm going to call the vote.
Yeah, if my comments were negative towards the police, I'll retract them as well. But my frustration will stay, and I'll tell you why. In the corporate world, when you do a budget, when you do an SOP or an AOP, an SOP is a 5-year plan. When you do an AOP, which is a 1-year plan of your budgets, and you lay it out, we always do within the first quarter. We do a reforecast to make sure that we're still aligned. So what we do is we're jumping the gun early. We're doing our budget, which I appreciate the fact that we're doing it kind of fiscally. However, the paper reports it. All of us on council announce it, and we say 2.7, 2.7, and we tell that's what we came up with. It's got to be a 2.7 provision number that's communicated out to the public. I'm a man of my words, and when I say 2.7, it's got to stay 2.7. And so in the future, this could happen again, right? Especially if there's more development. There could be more and more fluctuations. So either we have a budget process, I think I'm maybe doubling a little bit down on what Councillor Scott was saying. We have a budget process where we put a provisional rate in, and then within a few months we revisit it and we lock it in based on all these other factors coming forward. Or we basically just turn around and say, yeah, this, we go through the strong mayor, and we don't veto it, and we just let it kind of go through, and we wait the term. But in my opinion, I don't think we should be locking in a rate and communicating that rate as anything more than a provisional rate, because it's not fair to residents should something happen, and then it's like, well, what do we got to do? At the end of the day, how much money is in this reserve, first of all, And if we keep taking from reserves every single time to do a little balancing act, I get that's what reserves are for, but there's still only one taxpayer. So we're just taking a reserve and covering the cost, but taxpayers already funded that cost. So at the end of the day, the rate is still 2.8. We're just not showing 2.8. So it's not as real as what you think it is.
Okay. We should vote on it. Let's vote on it. We can go back and forth, but it is not 2.8. What we're passing is 2.7, and that's what the rate is. Whether we the matter is, the fact is what gets passed, and that's the rate. We could have started at 10. Doesn't matter, the rate is a 10. It's what's being passed. So with all that, all in favor of option A? Okay. Any opposed? Okay, carried. And no one wants a 10% increase. I hope not. And now I'm not going to read the motion again, but it's the main motion as on option A. We had the mover and a seconder for that, right? Okay. Main motion as amended. All in favor? Okay, carried. Any opposed? Okay, thank you. Okay, recommendation that report ENG 2025-1 titled 2025 Development Engineering Fees Update be received for information, and that Schedule A of Bylaw 2024-94, the fees and charges bylaw, be amended as described in this report, and that the necessary bylaw be brought forward for enactment. Moved by Councillor Harper, second by Councillor Dehaney. Any comments or questions? Simple report, thank you. All in favor? Okay, carried. Councillor Giordano, you declared on this. Okay. All right, there was note made on that earlier. We're moving on. 15.3.3. Recommendation that report REC 2025-4 titled Public Square Event Permit Request be received for information, and that council approve in principle the proposed event known as BWG's Original Retro Block Party event, and that council declare the event of municipal significance so that the event organizer can begin special occasion permit process. Mover and a seconder, please. Councillor Scott, Councillor Harper, comments or questions? Councillor Frigidi.
Thank you. I'm looking at the report that we received, and I'm kind of surprised that there was no presentation or deputation held by the applicant of the event, because in the report there's a full-blown PowerPoint presentation in here which could actually give us a breakdown of what's going to happen, how it's going to happen, and how we're setting this thing up. This is going to be an event space where we're hoping that a lot of places or a lot of events occur, but at the same time we want to make sure that everything is handled well. We want to make sure that it's a safe event. We want to make sure that it's an event for the entire community. It's not just for one specific group, I guess, because it's a community space. So if it's being rented out and then you're having it open to the public, something that's available to the community, something that's going to benefit the community as a whole, and then there's a lot of different aspects that are happening here, which me personally, I'd love to see. You're talking live music, you're talking about a beer garden, you're talking about food. Sounds incredible. I want to see these things happen more and more. But at the same time, we've had conversations about liability, about the responsibility of the municipality, and making sure that we are covered so we can do events like this timely and taking every precaution to make sure that they're done well. So I just wanted to, I didn't know if the applicant could speak to it or if you guys could speak to it, because there was a full presentation here and I would have appreciated to hear a bit more about it.
Thank you, Councillor Ferragini. I can appreciate your comments. Like you, we're very interested in seeing this square utilized in a responsible manner. Council did receive a report December 17th. It was around events process and fee schedules. had to do with Carafest and the square in a combined report. Within that report, it was mentioned that with the square, the permit process, should it be deemed necessary, or if we feel it's deemed necessary, staff feel it's deemed necessary to report to council on an application, that we would bring it to council. That this is what you're seeing tonight. You are correct that there's a lot of information within the attachment of the report. This is information that we have met with the applicants to walk through. What you're seeing right now is kind of a presentation that they provided us as in the attachment that reflects the changes and requirements that the town was seeking to be satisfied with the application to bring this report to council for consideration. There may be a time in the future where we may not necessarily need to bring this to council, but that'll be up to council to decide. This is brand new, and as you mentioned, Councillor Perugini, we want to ensure council is aware of what is happening, who's interested, and how we can report to council to ensure that council is comfortable what will be taking place and what is actually a public square. We want to ensure that this square is going to be open, wide open to the public, all times it's not in use for formalized events. And council, I think, should take it seriously if somebody is proposing an event that may close it off to general public use for any kind of purpose at all. So that's what you're seeing tonight. The applicant is here to speak to any of the details within the within what they're trying to deliver as part of their program. And I'm sure he's going to be happy to provide you more details on specific questions of it. The report here is to inform council. We are satisfied with the work that the applicant has done working with staff, and it's a complete application that we are recommending for you to consider.
Okay, thank you. Follow up?
Okay, thank you, Terry, and I appreciate those comments. And based on the report that was put forward, the recommendation which was there, which was great. Does the applicant want to add anything else to this? Is there anything else that the applicant would like to add to? Because I just felt like there was such a big presentation put forward and everything like that. There was going to be something put to council instead of just looks good, let's go forward with it. So, yeah, the applicant.
Go ahead, Terry.
I'm sure if the applicant wishes to come up and have offer you any more, that's really why they're here, so they can express it. No different than we've done with other special events applications in town. We're simply providing the recommendation report based on the information they provide. So I'm sure Josh would like to come up and speak with you at his discretion, and I can leave the table with Andia and Josh to present the rest.
Thank you. I actually thought this was well done because the presentation is there in detail. If we read it, we have all kinds of information. If there is a specific question that we need answered, I would welcome Josh to come up and say it. But if it's just the presentation, I think the job was really well done. It's self-explanatory, but if you have anything to add, and if there's a question, by all means, please come up. Otherwise, we'll move to the next questions. You have a question? Okay, Councillor Harper.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, to Terry. In the application versus the presentation, and maybe you can help bring this forward as it was mentioned to me by other councillors that brought forward him. When the application says, will alcohol be served at the event, it says no, but in the presentation there's a space for a beer garden. Is there alcohol being at this thing or not? We can just clarify that point and how we're going to regulate that.
Yes, it is. It is actually in the application. It is a part of the upfront kind of briefing within the report, but it is detailed within the presentation, which is in the attachment of the report, and details specific around how they're going to operate that beer garden and the security measures that are in place. I don't want to speak in any great detail to it. Again, staff are at a comfort level here, but the applicant is here if you wish for him to speak to it in more detail.
Would you like to please come up and speak about the beer garden?
Hello, Gansel. Thanks for having me today. I'm Josh, and I'm the director of the Retro Street Party, which is now the Block Party. And just to address that question with regards to a beer garden, yeah, it was something that that came across now that we have this nice new space that is, fenced off, something that's more contained rather than our past events would have been locally held, kind of on the street. So we thought, with the great new space, the actual the stage that we now have, we're able to save money. So with this, we wanted to extend some new initiatives towards the party, right? And to create a different feel, a different atmosphere, bring something else to the community. And with that, we had the idea of creating a beer garden. So with logistic-wise, we looked at how that would work. And since we have fenced-off areas, we're going to implement other fencing, extra security. In the deck, I believe you can see how we would support that is for every 100 people within the beer garden, we'd have an additional security member, right? So it was brought to council to have that in place as kind of an extra feature for the event.
Okay, thank you. I have Mayor Leduc and then Councilor Scott.
I just have a question. Yeah, it was a great job on everything. I have a question for Terry or Andia, whoever would be able to answer it. Capacity. Do we know the capacity of the area that our celebration square? I don't know if it was another report. I forgot.
So the maximum is 2,000 for it.
Okay, so we're within 2,000. Great. Okay, I think that's all I had.
Okay, Councilor Scott.
So I'm going to apologize for being cheeky here, but I can't resist making this point. In 1984, a young Kevin Bacon moved from Chicago to a small town where the mayor and council had banned rock and roll music by city ordinance. I do not want to be that council. I would like a delegation of authority bylaw so staff can approve routine event permits and it not come to council. Thank you.
Good point. Any other comments or questions? Councilor Daiki.
Saying that, I give the group credit. They started on the Blue Dasher, and they've done a lot of good for the community. Donations to the food bank and just getting the neighbors together and just to provide that community event. I guess it goes back to staff. I think this is going to be our first, or correct me, other than the Cadillac draw, but this would be the first alcohol event on the square, but on municipal property when it comes to this area. So that's going to open up a new venue for everybody. Because once this is opened up, I'm sure there's many people in the background that will want to do different events as well, and have to be equal. We have to treat everyone equally. So it will add some excitement to our municipality, more culture. There's many opportunities here to do many things because going door to door years ago, people want to see more events and they want to stay in our community, be local, and have more excitement in our town rather than going to really in other places. So it's great that we could do something in our own backyard.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Yes, and that's a great point. So when bringing this to council, it was also part of it. We wanted to set an example of what a high caliber event would be, right? Something that could set a benchmark for future events. So working with town staff, going through this in great detail, putting together a very thorough presentation, outlining how the beer garden would work, the support, security, emergency plans. All that was to really present something to council so that we could have something in future that was the standard, that was something that we could move forward from, where maybe town staff would be able to approve, like you said, without bringing it to council. So having the beer garden in place, having all these other standards set, I think would just help for the square, the community in general, for future community events, private events, and larger scale events as well.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments? Okay, I have two questions. One is for you, if you can speak on how many police officers are you hiring? I know it says in the report for the benefit of the community. It's also mentioned about bringing on at cost the EMS. That's the question for you, if you can talk about that. The question I have for staff is, the washrooms in the library and the leisure center are marked as the public washrooms for the event. 2,000 people going through these washrooms. It's going to require some upkeep. Is that cost of that staff included in those services? Because now we're going to have extra costs to utilize these two facilities.
Yeah, so I'll first address kind of our emergency plans and security support. So we were looking for support for, in past events, we've had the auxiliary police officers come to our events and support us there. So I'm just trying to find my numbers in here. If you give me 1 second. Yeah, do you want to answer the following question? Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Sandhu. It's a good question. Very similar in nature to movies or music in the park. These facilities have been the primary washrooms. This one is a little larger, but you'll see in their site plan under their legend, there are other porta potties that are being brought in. And we've kind of worked on where they can be placed to take up that load. So that's going to help a bit. We are going to have staff eyes on this event regardless, and they'll be taking care of overseeing the activities in the lobby of the library. We already have our staff in the leisure center that will be doing that. Also with an understanding that the organizer is going to have security monitoring the space as well. So we're not charging additional funds for additional staff because, quite frankly, we want to keep eyes on this one, probably future events of this scale, regardless with staff members. So we're already accounting that into what we would do for anybody.
Just do that. I think in future, even in this event, we need to look at it because it is costing us extra cost, and it is a little different than movies in the park because movies in the park is a town event. This is a private event. It should be no different to anyone else. If we set a precedent here that we don't do it here to recoup our cost, this event will be used by the others and say, why did you let them off the hook and why are you charging us? Keep that in mind, please, because we still have the option.
If I could, that can be a consideration of council tonight if that's an additional add-on for the request of this event. That can be taken care of now if that's what you wish to do.
Okay, thank you. I'll leave it up to my colleagues. That's the point I have. But you have the answer for the others?
So just to second that, so we do on the site plan here, I see we have our porta potties, and we will be advising people to use those when they can, but the idea for the public washrooms are to support family members, people with children, maybe babies or whoever, right? Just for extra use facilities, right? But ideally, we will be funneling the majority of people to use our porta potties and facilities that we have provided. For the police, so we were going to be doing 3 paid police officers, and we're looking for support with some additional auxiliary officers. And when it comes to EMS, different things like that, we're working very closely with town staff, and we want to make sure that everything that we do is feasible, and we'll make sure that this event is as successful as possible, and with the main emphasis on safety, security for all that attend, as well as for the town in general, right? So we want to make sure that, like we said, this does set a benchmark, and we will, ensure and go over and above on all EMS, fire safety with food vendors, all those additional security measures that we know will make this a true success and accepted in council's eyes. Along with that, we also have additional things that town staff brought forward to us with restrictions on things that we can bring into the event square, such as bouncy castles, glitter, chalk. All that's been reviewed and is part of our report, and is something that we're going to stick by to make sure that once again we create an event that is a benchmark that everybody can follow.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Mayor Leduc and then Councilor Dike.
So Deputy Mayor, you did bring up a good point about the staff recovered costs. I think we should be looking at that. It is our first event. I'd like to get it right, and I'm not here to take the money away. I know you guys are going to give it to charity, and I hate to say that, but I think we should recover staff's cost a little bit, some portion of it, Terry. So if you work that in to save what the cost is going to be, because we normally wouldn't have staff sitting in the lobby of the library. I think it's a good idea to have it out there. I really think it'll help us maintain the bathrooms, things like that. So I would like to see maybe a portion of that recovered. Okay. So I'm just going to say that if council can endorse that as a direction to the director to work through that process, he can pick the number of cost recovery. That wasn't covered in the fee. Oh, am I on?
Councillor Daikie?
So I see the beer garden is 6,400 square feet. That's correct? 6,400 square feet in the site plan, what I have in front of me. So my question to Terry and CareFest, the same rules apply with policing apples to apples? That's my question, Terry.
As in year past with Carrot Fest, the beer garden had been attached to as an extension of an existing license. We're moving into new process this year with the new vendor that we're working through the details on, and the property security measures will be in place at Carrot Fest. The reality is with this event square, being that it is a controllable site, believe it or not, the reality is it's fenced. The entire space could be licensed. It's the event organizer's desire to keep it contained to an area, to keep it more family friendly, I believe. So the reality is I think it's a tight plan that they are controlling it in that method. You know, and it's really not going to be a space any larger than what we would offer at Carrot Fest or comparable.
Okay, thank you. Okay, any other comments or questions? Okay, then we have the recommendation. I'm not going to read it again. Duly moved by, we have, okay, all in favor? Okay. Carried. Thank you very much. Thanks for your presentation. Okay, moving along. That the committee of the whole adjourn at 9:04 p.m. Moved by Councillor Daikie, Councillor Perugini, all in favor? Carried. Thank you. Back to you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Well done. We will reconvene the meeting at 9:04, the regular meeting. We have committee minutes and recommendations. So I have recommendation that committee minutes, recommendations, items 17.1 to 17.2, inclusive, be received and approved. Anybody like any of these recommendations pulled? They're the youth recommendations that just received the minutes, and they are 4 recommendations from the Strategic Initiatives Committee. Councillor Dehaney. 17.25. Okay. For a change to the recommendation or just to speak to it? Okay, go ahead.
If there, I know, of course, with the warmer weather approaching, do we have like a time frame as to when this will be implemented? The crosswalk?
So Councillor Dehaney's asking to our director when this would be implemented.
Yeah.
How soon would this get done after we made the recommendation? What are we looking at for a time frame? Tony or who? Do you have a time frame on this, Tony? What's that?
He's working on the report.
Oh, no, the question is with the recommendation for the crosswalk at Miller Park Avenue, Long Street, and our Armstrong Crescent. After we approve that tonight, is there a time frame on when we can get this implemented? Councillor Dehaney would like to know how long it's going to take us to get this done. Can you come up to the mic, please?
Right, through your worship to Councillor Dehaney. Realistically, it'll be beginning of May at this point by the time we get the materials purchased, and then we need typically 15 degrees consistent asphalt temperature.
Okay, we're good. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. All right, so I have the recommendation. Again, I read it. It is that Committee of Minutes and Recommendations, item 17.1, 72 inclusive, be received and approved. Did I have mover and a seconder? Okay, moved by Councilor Verkuyk, seconded by Councilor Vergini. Question, concerns? Seeing none, all in favor? Carried, thank you. We are on to no new business. Bylaws, recommendation bylaw 2025-34, 35, and 36 be passed. 34 is the AMPS bylaw amendment. 35 is the traffic bylaw amendment, 2014-91, and the 36 is the part lock control exemption for 116 Church Street. Comments or questions? Seeing none, moved by Deputy Mayor, seconded by Councilor Giordano. All in favor? Carried, thank you. No notice of motions, no motions. We're on to announcements. All right, so to start off, we have proclamation flag raisings. We have World Autism Day, April 2nd. Flag raising ceremony will be held on Wednesday, April 2nd, 11 a.m. at the courthouse. And we have Khalsa Day, April 13th. That flag raising will be held Saturday, April 12th at 4:30 at the courthouse. Okay, so the day is the 13th, sorry, with the flag raising on the 12th. Thank you. Sorry about that. At 4:30 at the courthouse, so come and join us then. Next slide. Upcoming events, we have Battle of the Badges. We come and support the Battle of the Badges. We have our fire department and our South Simcoe Police battling out on April 5th, 7 p.m. at the Bradford Leisure Center right next door in the Blue Rink. All funds go to our food bank, so come out and have fun and watch that Battle of the Blades, or Battle of the Badges, sorry. And then we have Cleanup Week, dated April 21st to 27. To learn more, please go to www.townofbwg.com/cleanup. Let's get out and clean our community up, everyone, through April 21 to 27. Please pick up any garbage around your place. You need any supplies, please just reach out to that website, and we will certainly have supplies. We also have the Town of Bradford's Traffic Calming Program. We have our second public meeting coming up, which is Thursday, April 24th, 4 to 8 p.m. at the Bradford Leisure Center. So come out to the Traffic Calming PIC Thursday, April 24th, 4 to 8, right here at the Bradford Leisure Center. Anything you want to know about it, the news, it was www.townofbwg.com/news, I think it said. There it is, yeah, news. Okay, thank you. And then off to other events and campaigns. We have April Pools Day. That was a fun one in the past. I used to swim in that one and, well, kind of drowned. But anyways, on Sunday, April 26th, we have from 12 to 5, we have the BWG Leisure Center Community Corner April Pools Day. So come out and join that and have a lot of fun there. And a big, we want to mention that we have our 100th anniversary for the Holland Marsh celebrations this year for 2025. The canals were constructed in 1925, and this is the 100th anniversary of it. We're in conjunction with King Township and Bradford, and we've got many events, so please watch out for those events throughout the year. We're going to have a great celebration of that. And then we have upcoming council advisory committees. We have the Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Advisory Committee, April 2nd. That's tomorrow night, 7 p.m. at the Large Engineering Boardroom at 305 Barry. The Accessibility Advisory Committee, we have April 9th at 6 p.m. The BWG Library Boardroom here at 425 Hall Street. Regular council and committee whole meeting on April 15th, 7 p.m. right here again at 425 Hall Street. That's it. Thank you very much. We're into county updates. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Your Worship. County Council meeting was very short. We had, as many of you know, and you've probably seen it on the news and read it over the news, is that we had a staff report about council composition after the public meeting of March 11th. And there was talk about weighted vote, and some member municipalities or some council members at the county did not like the way the weighted vote was happening, but the funny thing is it did not change. It was exactly same as in the proposal what it has been all the years. The only addition was that if we were to go to 16 members plus a full-time warden, that the warden would have gotten 4 votes. So it was 145 to 149, but the key point is each municipality, what they had before in their weighted votes, would have had same if this was carried through. They asked for a 5-minute break, and after the break, these members decided to gather outside and didn't come back in. So 17 out of the 32 walked out. We had no quorum, and as a result of that, had to cancel the meeting or postpone the meeting, which resulted in, because we also had a funding report for the child care and early years system funding, where we get $56 million, over 151 million, sorry. And that report was not dealt with. And to me and to many of us, at least the 15 that stayed in that room, that was such a childish act on the others, because it was, you know, we had important matters to deal with, which was dealt with a special council meeting the following day. That is the only update I have. We have the same report coming back next Tuesday. Looking forward to it. I hope you know, better sense prevails and they come back. This is a system where majority wins, and if it goes the other way, so be it. But we have to be adults and have to do our job what people elected us to do. So it's a report, but it's not something that I'm very proud to share, because at the end of the day, those are our colleagues at County Council.
All right, thank you for that update, Deputy Mayor. It's a difficult one, but thank you so much. Further updates or this question? Okay.
Thank you, Mayor. To Deputy Mayor, what, based on what was happening there, are we moving to the 16, the full-time warden? Like, that was what was proposed before. Like, and they're upset about it. Like, what's the outcome that we're looking for versus like the possibility that might happen? Just to clarify publicly, we can, for our residents here.
So what was supposed to happen at that council meeting was the proposal to go to 16 after the public meeting happened. If it passed that day, it was supposed to go back to the municipalities for each municipality to have their public meeting and discuss that bylaw. And then you need, in order for that to take effect, you need 9 municipalities out of 6 to come back as voting that it carried. So out of the 16, so it never happened. So hopefully, I'm hoping at least they come back and say, okay, let's have a vote. It is what it is, the vote when it happens, and then give the 16 municipalities, their residents, a chance to see what they want done, and if they're in agreement with it or not. I think they're not even going to that point, and the big sticking point for them was that the weighted vote, the way it is with 16 members, is somehow not going to benefit the northern municipalities, that they felt the southern municipalities will carry the more vote, or they can get together and talk up amongst themselves and come vote as a block. And they did the exact same thing that they were worrying about the south municipalities. They went out and voted as a block, or didn't vote as a block. They just stayed out.
Yeah, I don't want to debate this tonight, but we'll do this on Tuesday, and hopefully, if nothing changes, we will be reducing down to 16. If everything stays the same, we'll get down to 16, and then we'll come back to the local municipalities. We'll get to vote on it from this end, and then it'll be hopefully enacted by. It has to be done by January 1, 2026. So hopefully it'll move forward. So, okay. All right, move on to confirmed proceedings. That the bylaw 2025-37, a bylaw to confirm proceedings of the regular council and committee of whole meeting dated April 1st, 2025, be enacted. Moved by Councillor Ferragini, seconded by Councillor Dykey. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. We now have recognition of the meeting hereby adjourned at, what time is it? It's 9:17, moved by Councilor Verkuyk, seconded by Councilor Scott. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Have a great night, everyone. Thank you for joining us.